Hello everyone, I am Julian Morris of the Channel 5 News. In the headlines, Prime Minister Skerritt challenges critics who say the Procurement Act is not being adhered to. A review of the police force could provide answers to the private sector concerns about post-Maria looting. And a plan to get relatives more involved at the infirmary seems to be working. The details coming up. First up in the news, Prime Minister Skerritt says he will not wait on a long tendering process to respond to urgent situations, despite concerns of non-adherence to the Public Procurement Act.
The Builders and Contractors Association has accused government of not conducting a transparent or open procurement method in awarding a recent housing project to a Barbadian firm. But Prime Minister Skerritt insisted, as he delivered his Christmas message on DBS Radio on Friday, that there was no violation of the public procurement legislation.
You hear some people saying the government is violating the procurement law. This is nonsense. This is totally not true. The government is certainly within the boundaries of the procurement legislation. People need homes. Should I have to go through a whole process of months and weeks and even years to procure homes for people who desperately need homes? Laws were never meant to tie people's hands. Laws were always meant to facilitate, and a law cannot be asked. And certainly the procurement law is not one. It provides for certain situations where of emergencies, and gives the Minister for Finance the authority to procure on behalf of the state certain goods and services that are critically needed.
The Builders and Contractors Association considers the 1,000 home contract to Preconco Limited of Barbados a major procurement event, and according to its president Anthony Libler, small housing contractors are being deprived from work. While BCAD has written a letter to government on their concerns, Mr. Skerritt is asking what specific section of the law has been violated.
People mustn't allow their selfish ambitions to overshadow the greater good of the country. And some people who are criticizing certain procurement decisions of the government are doing so because of their own personal, selfish, greedy ambitions. But interestingly, that some of these very same people who are criticizing the procurement processes, when they are engaged directly with no tendering process, it is fine. Let us be frank and honest. Who in Dominica or the OECS have the capacity to supply us if 1,000 homes now? And it is something we're going to have to have a very frank discussion in this country, because we're going to need to bring in people to help us rebuild Dominica.
In other news, the management of the Dominic Infirmary is reporting progress in plans to get residents to visit more regularly their relatives at that institution. The plan seems to be working.
Over the past years, the infirmary had been advocating for the greater involvement of relatives in the lives of those resident there, as the lack of interest has been a major concern to management. To this end, the infirmary hosted Residents Awareness Week in December for the past 2 years. This year, though, the infirmary could not host the event, but its director says last year's function yielded positive feedback in getting relatives on board with the operations of the infirmary.
After last year's RAW, one of the things we identified was the need for a resident relative liaison officer. And we work very closely with the National Employment Program. And through the NEP, we were able to source the services of a young lady who has a first degree in psychology. And she works directly with the residents and the relatives. We've put together a system in place where she sits with each resident for a particular period of time and has casual conversation, find out about their children, where did they come from, and so on. And through the information obtained, we try to track relatives who we do not have. Because what would happen when people come into the infirmary? Some people, for example, would come in through their village council or through the district nurse, or through a pastor, and we do not have a relative or a next of kin in that sense. And so her job would be to reach out to the community and try to identify or try to locate family members of that resident. So we've started that process, and we're going to continue with it. Since RAW and up to now, we've seen an increase in family involvement. We've seen an increase in family contributing towards the institution.
The director explained that new initiatives have been introduced to increase family involvement in the lives of the residents.
Like everything else is going to take time to get to where we want it to be. Like we always say that the infirmary is an extension of the resident's home or the relative's home. So when somebody takes in a resident to the infirmary, it's not just you take them to the hospital and you visit them kind of thing. It's supposed to be a long-term relationship, and we're supposed to be an extension of your home. So whenever you go to the garden, remember the infirmary. Whenever you get some out-of-pocket money that you can spend, remember the infirmary, because your grandmother is there, your uncle is here, whoever is here. So we have a little way to go in getting relatives to understand their role in terms of the residents at the infirmary. One thing that we implemented was that they could take the residents home maybe for a day for Sunday lunch, the birthday, Christmas Day, Father's Day, and so on. And we've seen a little increase in that area as well, where people would say, I would like to take that person out to visit with the family. Or we have this lady, they religiously come take her out to visit a sick family member who can't leave the home. So there's an improvement. There's a little way to go still. And we're hoping with the help of the liaison officer that we can make greater strides in that area.
Apart from getting more support locally, St. Luce says the international community has also come on board to help, especially in the wake of Hurricane Maria.
The Food for the Poor provides assistance to organizations through REACH, so we've been able to benefit from there. We've also been benefiting from the Dominica Association, and that contribution is quite significant in that they're helping us to change some of the beds on the wards. So they've been able to source proper beds for geriatric care from a hospital in Guadeloupe, 30 of them, and they're assisting us in bringing them in to outfit the wards with the beds. We received some, and we started putting them on the wards, and the residents are so elated. We're hoping that that relationship continues, where the hospital will continue assisting us with other medical needs as well as human resource. So when we're done putting in the beds, then the president of the hospital is going to come visit the infirmary and see how they can further work with the Dominic Infirmary. So that assistance is quite significant.
A review of the Dominica police force expected to answer private sector concerns over post-Maria looting. Members of the Dominica Business Forum, in a position paper presented to government since the hurricane, called for a review of what it characterizes as the failure of the security apparatus of the state. The country's leader pointed out last week the ongoing review of the police force came not as a result of the DBF's request.
We have allowed the persons appointed to do the review, to interview and to speak with a wide cross-section of the society. So they had the opportunity to speak to a number of people in the private sector, the religious community, the leader of the opposition was down, and a number of other stakeholders. So that's the first phase of it, to look at the Dominica police force. What are the limitations there? What are the challenges there? What are the strengths there? What are the weaknesses there? So that those issues can be addressed. Critically, we are going to have some kind of review as to what went wrong on September 19th. Why wasn't there sufficient coverage by the police on September 19th? And to ensure that, one, we can know what went wrong, if anything, and what needs to be done to avoid some of that happening in the future.
A strategic partnership with the Jamaican Defence Force to train local police will be one of the follow-up actions from the review. The idea is to implement some recommendations immediately.
Once they're practical, I cannot give a commitment that we will take every recommendation, because I haven't seen them. I haven't seen all of them. There are one or two that I have seen that we are starting to work on, and the minister will give effect to this in the next few days after Christmas. The idea is to ensure that we can provide what needs to be provided to address the situation in the country. But I said to you that we acted upon this review of the police force way in advance of any recommendation coming from anybody else.
And despite the impact of Hurricane Maria, Dominican royalty was able to collaborate with individuals both here and abroad to bring Christmas cheer to the people of this country. Andrea Louis reports.
Miss Dominica and Miss Caribbean Culture 2017, Jade Romaine, explained that while she too suffered personal loss from Maria, it was important to share the spirit of Christmas with the wider Dominican public.
It did have a very serious impact because personally I was severely affected by Hurricane Maria. I lost my entire home, not only my roof and all its contents. And so that of course was very difficult, but that is the situation for a lot of other people. So we all are trying to cope with it as best as we can. So I of course needed to recoup and to try to get back on my feet. And of course in order to implement projects you would need sponsorship. And because of Hurricane Maria, we all know that things are a little bit tighter now. Companies really have to watch their budgets and spend wisely. So the projects that I had intended for September to December did not go as planned. However, despite personal difficulties and the difficulties that my country is facing right now, I did try my best to bring some Christmas cheer. So what I did is I accompanied the Rotaract Club of Roseau, who went on a Rota mass train delivering Christmas gifts to the children of Bellevue, Chopé, and Pichelay. So I was very happy to do that with them. The children were very excited to meet me. That was a lot of fun. And I also donated a hamper to a young mother from my community. Her name is Adia Bellot. The hamper was sponsored by Mr. Randy Jeffers, who is the host and organizer of the Caribbean Culture Queen Pageant, which I won in August. So I was very happy to do that. And I also went to the Melissa Skerritt Foundation, of course, our Prime Minister's wife, Mrs. Melissa Skerritt. She had a party at the State House yesterday, Boxing Day, and I was there bringing some Christmas cheer as well. So I was very happy to do that. It made me forget about the difficulties that I am facing and allowed me to warm the hearts of others, and that is what Christmas is about.
During the lead up to the Miss Dominica 2017 pageant, Romaine was passionate about her platform, mental health. She says though her initial plans were affected, she is determined to sensitize people on mental wellness through her platform projects.
And in January, despite the difficulties, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, I am planning a mental health fair. More information becomes available, I will make the public know. In September, what I wanted to do was to go to the various schools and speak to young children about mental health, because I believe that mental health should be incorporated in the school syllabus in some way, because we need to start discussing this issue with students from a young age so that as they become older, they are already sensitized a bit, and so the stigma and so on that and the lack of information that surrounds mental illness can significantly decrease. So when school opens in January, after the mental health fair, I do intend to still go to the schools and speak to as much young people as I can.
And on the topic of pageantry, Romaine, who was to participate in her third regional pageant earlier this month, said the impact of the hurricane season on the Caribbean region caused that pageant to be called off. She also lent her support to the prospect of the Miss Dominica 2018 pageant being held in April instead of during the usual carnival season.
Unfortunately, the pageant was cancelled by the pageant's organizers. They were affected by Irma as well because it was in St. Kitts, and the Caribbean region had a very difficult hurricane season. So other islands were affected as well, and so the organizer thought the best thing to do would be to call off the pageant this year. So unfortunately, I could not have participated because there was no pageant. I think that pageantry is very important to us as Dominicans. Usually, the Miss Dominica pageant is held during the carnival season, which is an important aspect of our culture. But of course, sponsorship and so on may be difficult at that time. So the idea came about to postpone the pageant to April. I wish that it goes very well. I support the decision. I believe that another young woman should get the chance to represent her country to be Miss Dominica. I do believe that difficulties may arise, but I would encourage the corporate community to assist as much as they can, and us as Dominicans to just be supportive. Yeah, so I encourage young ladies who might be a little sketchy or afraid to try. I tried and I won, so you can do that as well. Being Miss Dominica is a wonderful experience and not something to be missed.
To end the news, a look at the headlines again. Prime Minister Skerritt challenges critics who say the Procurement Act is not being adhered to. A review of the police could bring answers to the private sector over post-Maria looting, and a plan for relatives of those at the infirmary to visit more regularly seems to be working. Feel free to contact us at news@marpin2k4.com on behalf of the production team. I am Julian Morris. Thank you for watching, and season's greetings to everyone.